The laughter echoed like broken glass through the marble corridors of Mitchell Technologies, slicing through the quiet hum of the 42nd floor. Zara Johnson, a 29-year-old Black American woman with warm brown skin and intelligent dark eyes, stood frozen just outside the heavy walnut doors of the executive conference room. She clutched a neat folder of quarterly reports in her hands, her knuckles white against the smooth cream paper. She'd come to deliver the documents requested by her boss, Ethan Mitchell, a 34-year-old white American billionaire who ran one of the country's most powerful tech conglomerates. She had worked as his executive assistant for nearly 2 years, 60-hour weeks, managing schedules that never ended, solving crises before they exploded, and quietly holding together the chaos of his empire. Zara had always prided herself on professionalism, on dignity, on keeping her head down and focusing on the work. But the words drifting through the crack in the door made her chest ache with a sharp, unfamiliar pain. Inside voices laughed, casual, cruel. "Come on, Ethan," drawled Brandon Pierce, 35, Ethan's childhood friend and the heir to a luxury hotel empire. "You can't seriously consider bringing your little assistant to the Henderson Foundation Gala. That's Manhattan's event of the year, not Career Day. She's so ordinary," added Chelsea Whitmore, 32, the sleek blonde daughter of a media tycoon. Her voice was sweet but edged with venom. "She probably shops at clearance racks and thinks Olive Garden is fine dining." The words were met with laughter, sharp and ringing. Zara's grip on the reports trembled, but she stayed rooted to the spot, unable to move. Through the narrow opening, she caught a glimpse of Ethan leaning casually in his leather chair, his icy blue eyes glinting in the afternoon light that streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His dark brown hair was perfectly styled, his custom-tailored charcoal suit sculpted to his tall, lean frame. Surrounding him was his usual circle of old-money friends, lounging like royalty in their self-made kingdom, sipping 20-year-old whiskey in crystal tumblers, as if they owned the city beneath them. And in a way they did. What would she even wear? Chelsea laughed again, her lips curling in a practiced smirk. Does she even own a dress that costs more than $50? The photographers would have a field day watching your poor little assistant try to play dress-up with Manhattan's elite. Zara's stomach twisted, humiliation creeping like fire beneath her skin. Then another voice joined in, Tyler Beckett, 36, whose family controlled half of the city's real estate portfolio. "Ethan, listen to me. You have to invite her. Please do it. It'll be hilarious." Watching her try to navigate the gala, seeing her face when she realizes she's out of her league. It'll be the joke of the season. A pause. Then the sound of Ethan chuckling softly, low, deliberate, almost amused. "You know what? You're right," Ethan said finally, his voice smooth but distant. "It would be interesting." The room erupted in fresh laughter. Zara's chest tightened painfully. For almost 2 years she had worked tirelessly for Ethan Mitchell, a man she had once believed, against her better judgment, might have a decent heart buried beneath all that wealth and polish. She had seen flashes of it late at night, when they were the last 2 people in the office, moments when he stayed behind to review proposals, to sign documents himself instead of delegating. Moments when he quietly donated to charities without announcing it to the press. She had allowed herself to believe there was more to him than privilege. But this stripped away the illusion. "Bet she doesn't even show up," Brandon said between laughs. "I've got 1,000 that says she makes some excuse about being sick." "Make it 5. Chelsea chimed in, her smile cold and sharp. "There's no way she has the guts to walk into that ballroom." Zara swallowed hard, forcing air into her lungs as her vision blurred. A hot tide of humiliation burned through her chest, threatening to spill over into tears she refused to let fall. She wanted to run back to her desk, out of the building, away from this tower of privilege and pretense. But instead, something inside her shifted. A memory surfaced, her grandmother Marjorie standing over a chipped kitchen counter when Zara was 12, telling her in that soft southern cadence, "Baby, don't let anyone make you feel like you're less than them. The minute you believe that they win." Zara straightened her spine, breathing deeply, until the shaking in her hands stilled. With quiet precision, she knocked once on the heavy door. The laughter faded instantly. "Come in." Ethan's voice called, his tone slipping easily into its usual composed professionalism. Zara pushed the door open and stepped inside, her expression neutral, despite the inferno in her chest. She was dressed as she always was, a crisp navy blouse, tucked neatly into a black pencil skirt, her natural curls pulled into a tidy bun at the nape of her neck. She looked every bit the efficient assistant, but there was steel beneath her calm. She said that regarding the quarterly reports you requested, Mr. Mitchell placed the folder on his desk with steady hands. Ethan looked up at her, his blue gaze unreadable for half a second. Then something flickered the faintest awareness, as if he wondered whether she had heard. But Zara gave nothing away. "Thank you, Zara," he said smoothly. "Actually, there's something else I'd like to ask you." She nodded, her tone carefully polite. "Of course. The Henderson Foundation Gala." Ethan said casually, leaning back in his chair, "It's this Saturday night. I need a date, and I was wondering if you'd accompany me." For a split second, the room stilled. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Chelsea smirked. Tyler leaned forward, anticipation gleaming in his eyes. Zara's heart thundered in her chest. She knew this wasn't kindness. This wasn't generosity. It was the punchline of a joke she hadn't been invited to understand. But she also knew something else. She had a choice. Her mother's words echoed from just that morning when Zara had called Carmen, lying in a hospital bed battling breast cancer. "Baby girl, don't you let anyone decide your worth for you." Zara inhaled slowly and smiled, a slight composed curve of her lips. "I'd be honored, Mr. Mitchell," she said clearly, her voice steady and calm. A flicker of surprise passed across Ethan's face before he masked it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Excellent. The car will pick you up at 7. It's black tie, of course." Zara nodded, once turned on her heel, and walked out of the room, her back straight, despite the smothered laughter erupting behind her. Inside, her humiliation burned. Outside, a quiet resolve began to take root. They thought she would break, but Zara Johnson was about to prove them all wrong. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and Zara stepped onto the quiet 42nd floor hallway, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. The laughter from the conference room still echoed faintly in her ears, each sharp note cutting deeper than she wanted to admit. By the time she reached her desk, her hands were trembling. She sank into her chair, placed her bag on the side, and stared blankly at her computer screen. The numbers blurred together, black ink dissolving into meaningless shapes. She wasn't angry, not yet. She was humiliated. The Henderson Gala was more than just a party. It was Manhattan's social summit. Senators, CEOs, movie stars, and the city's wealthiest families gathered there. Zara had never expected to set foot in that ballroom, and now she was going as a joke. Her phone buzzed, breaking her trance. Lila Carter, her best friend since college, flashed across the screen. Zara hesitated before answering, forcing brightness into her voice. "Hey!" Lila didn't buy it for a second. "Z, what's wrong? You sound like you swallowed nails." Zara sighed, lowering her voice so no one nearby could hear. "It's nothing. Work. Don't just work me. Spill it." Zara hesitated, glancing around the office, then finally whispered the whole story, overhearing the laughter, the cruel bets, the invitation. Silence stretched for a moment on the other end. Then Lila exploded. "Oh, hell no! They're making fun of you. That rich boy boss of yours and his snobby friends think they can turn you into entertainment. Lila. Keep your voice down, Zara hissed, though a small involuntary smile tugged at her lips. Don't you dare smile. I know that smile your "I'm humiliated but pretending I'm fine" face. But listen to me, girl. If they want to laugh, let's give them a damn reason to choke on it. Zara frowned. Lila, I'm serious. You'll walk into that gala looking like you own the place. We will show them that you set the standard, not them. That evening, Zara stopped by the hospital on her way home. The rhythmic beep of monitors filled the quiet room, where Carmen, her mother, rested against the thin pillows. Baby Carmen greeted softly, her voice weak but warm. You look tired. I'm fine, Zara replied, setting down a bag of her mother's favorite snacks. How are you feeling? Better, Carmen said with a small smile. The new medication helps. For a few minutes they talked about test results and doctor visits. Then Carmen's sharp gaze caught the faint tension in her daughter's shoulders. What happened? She asked gently. Zara hesitated. It's nothing you need to worry about. Zara Lynn Johnson, Carmen said firmly, narrowing her eyes. Don't you nothing me. Zara took a deep breath, her throat tightening as she explained not the details about Ethan's friends or the bets, but enough for her mother to understand her weight. When she finished, Carmen reached for her hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Listen to me, baby girl. You don't let anyone decide your worth. You hear me? Not some billionaire boss, not his friends, not the whole damn city. Zara's composure cracked just a little. But Mom, I don't belong there. Carmen smiled faintly, her voice soft but steady. You belong wherever you decide you belong. The only thing that matters is how you carry yourself when you get there. Her mother's words settled deep into her bones like steel forged beneath fire. By the time Zara returned to her small Brooklyn apartment, night had fallen, and the city outside her window glowed with restless energy. She dropped her purse on the second-hand couch, kicked off her shoes, and sat cross-legged on the worn rug. Across from her, an old corkboard leaned against the wall, filled with photos of her mother in her nurse's uniform, her grandmother in her Sunday best, and Zara's college graduation day cap slightly askew. She stared at those images, remembering every late-night study session, every shift she'd worked to pay her tuition, and every door closed until she forced it open herself. Maybe she didn't grow up on the Upper East Side. Perhaps she didn't have old money private schools or connections that opened every opportunity. But she had earned her place at Mitchell Technologies. And if she could do that, she could handle one night in a ballroom full of billionaires. Zara grabbed her notebook from the coffee table, flipping to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote one sentence in bold, deliberate strokes. I will not be their punchline. Beneath it, she started a list. Step 1. Dress elegant. Sophisticated, unforgettable. Step 2. Confidence. Shoulders back, chin up. No apologies. Step 3. Preparation. Know everything about the gala, the foundation, the donors, and the politics. The page filled quickly, her pen racing across the paper until there was no more hesitation or doubt. She called Lila back. All right, Zara said, her voice steady now. Let's do this. Lila squealed on the other end. I knew it. Get some sleep tonight, because starting tomorrow, girl, we're turning you into a goddess. The next day, Zara spent her lunch break buried in research about the Henderson Foundation and its annual gala. It wasn't just about glamour. The event raised millions for education initiatives in underserved communities, funding scholarships and schools nationwide. That struck a chord deep within her. Growing up, scholarships had been Zara's lifeline. Without them, she wouldn't have been able to attend college, let alone graduate with honors. This gala wasn't just their playground. It was connected to something bigger than the arrogance of Ethan's friends. That thought gave her purpose. By the time she finished reading, she'd memorized the guest list, past beneficiaries, and even recent headlines about the Foundation's programs. If anyone at that gala tried to belittle her, she would have more than poise. She'd know, and knowledge was power. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Zara replayed the conference room scene repeatedly, the laughter, smug looks, and mocking voices. But instead of feeling small, she began to feel something else. Fire. This wasn't about Ethan anymore. It wasn't about impressing him, proving herself to his friends, or fitting into their world. This was about her dignity, her strength, her right to take up space anywhere she chose. By the time she drifted into restless sleep, one thing was clear. Zara Johnson wasn't going to survive the gala. She was going to own it. Saturday was only 3 days away. 3 days to transform humiliation into power. 3 days to rewrite the narrative. The plan was already in motion when Zara reached Lila Carter's boutique studio the next morning. The small space on the Lower East Side buzzed with energy racks of designer gowns, soft lighting reflecting off polished mirrors, and the faint hum of jazz playing in the background. Lila, sharp-eyed and fiercely creative, crossed her arms as Zara stepped inside. "All right, first rule," Lila declared, tilting her head as she studied Zara from head to toe. "We are not trying to make you one of them. We're showing them a version of you they've never seen, the woman they underestimated." Zara raised an eyebrow. "And the second rule?" "No apologizing," Lila said firmly. "For anything. Not for who you are, where you're from, or the price tag on your damn dress. You are the headline, Zara. Make them keep up with you." For the first time since the conference room incident, Zara smiled. "All right, coach, let's make them choke on their bets." The dress. They started with the most challenging part, finding the perfect gown. Zara had been prepared to max out her emergency fund, but Lila shook her head. "Girl, relax. I called in favors." True to her word, Lila had arranged access to a high-end consignment boutique uptown, where socialites quietly donated barely worn designer gowns in exchange for tax write-offs. Hours passed as Zara slipped in and out of fabric silks, satins, chiffons, until finally she stepped out of the fitting room in the dress. Deep emerald silk cascaded over her figure, like liquid light, hugging her waist before flowing into an elegant train. The color made her skin glow, and warm undertones caught the studio lights, like captured sunlight. The neckline was tasteful, but bold, and the back cut was low without scandalous. Lila's jaw dropped. "Z," she whispered, covering her mouth. "Girl, you don't just look expensive, you look untouchable." Zara turned toward the mirror, her breath catching softly. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself. This wasn't the quiet assistant behind a desk, scheduling other people's lives. This woman looked powerful, capable, a force to be reckoned with. The details. Once the dress was secured, they moved on to the accessories. Lila borrowed diamond drop earrings and a delicate bracelet from a friend who worked at a luxury jewelry store. "Less is more," Lila said, fastening the bracelet onto Zara's wrist. "The moment it looks like you're trying too hard, they'll smell blood in the water. We're going minimalist elegance," wealth whispers. It doesn't scream. Shoes came next, a pair of 4-inch gold stilettos that made Zara wobble when she first put them on. "Lila, I can't walk in these," Zara muttered, grabbing a chair for balance. "You will," Lila said firmly, dropping to her knees to adjust the straps. Small steps, core tight, weight forward. Glide, don't stomp. They practiced for nearly an hour, Zara crossing and recrossing the studio floor until her movements became smooth, natural, effortless. By the end, her walk had transformed, not just physically, but emotionally. Each step carried quiet confidence. Her shoulders squared, chin lifted. The mind. Lila knew that appearance was only half the battle. To truly belong in that ballroom, Zara had to command conversations, not just survive them. They sat at Zara's kitchen table for the next 2 nights, turning the living room into a crash course in social warfare. They researched every aspect of the Henderson Foundation, its mission impact, and the high-profile donors attending the gala. Zara memorized names, faces, and talking points. You don't just want to look like you belong, Lila coached, flipping through her tablet. You need to sound like you run the damn room. Zara absorbed everything: education policy updates, recent philanthropic controversies, profiles of senators, business leaders, and cultural influencers likely to attend. By midnight, she could recite statistics about underfunded schools, the foundation's scholarship success rates, and the latest debates over education policy. "This is insane," Zara said, rubbing her temples. "I'm cramming for finals, and you're going to ace them," Lila replied. "Because you're not faking who you are. Z, you've always been this woman. You're just finally letting them see it." The mask. On Friday evening, they tackled hair and makeup. A stylist specializing in natural textures created an intricate updo sculpting Zara's curls into a style that was elegant, yet authentically her. For makeup, they chose a bold but sophisticated look. Soft gold highlights, warm tones on her cheeks, and a deep wine-red lip that commanded attention without asking for it. When the final brushstroke was done, Zara turned toward the mirror and froze. The transformation wasn't just external. For the first time, she saw herself as the person she'd fought to become: intelligent, capable, and deserving of respect. "This isn't me," she whispered. Lila stepped behind her, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "No," she said softly. "This has always been you. They didn't want to see it." The fear. That night after Lila left, Zara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the emerald dress hanging near the window. Her apartment was quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic. Doubt crept in like shadows beneath the door. What if she failed? What if she tripped? What if she walked into that ballroom, and every cruel laugh she overheard came true? She reached for her phone and opened a photo of her mother in her nurse's uniform, smiling, exhausted, proud. Carmen had worked double shifts for decades, raised her alone, fought for every inch of stability they had. Zara inhaled deeply and whispered into the quiet, "I'm doing this for us." The resolve. Before she went to bed, Zara pinned a small handwritten note above her dresser, the last thing she would see before leaving for the gala. "You belong anywhere you decide to be." When she turned off the lights, she didn't feel humiliated anymore. She didn't feel small. She felt ready. For the first time since Ethan Mitchell invited her as a joke, Zara wasn't dreading the gala. She was looking forward to it. Because she understood something her boss and his friends didn't. They'd underestimated her, and that was about to be their biggest mistake. The city stretched endlessly beneath the glass wall in Ethan Mitchell's penthouse, lights glittering like 1,000 possibilities he couldn't seem to reach. He stood barefoot on the cold hardwood floor, nursing a glass of 18-year-old scotch. But the taste was hollow tonight. The usual peace he found gazing over Manhattan's skyline was absent. He couldn't stop replaying Zara's face in the conference room, calm, unreadable, but carrying something beneath the surface. Did she know? Had she heard? The thought left a sharp weight in his chest that the scotch couldn't dull. The group chat. His phone buzzed on the marble counter. Another message lit up the group chat. Assistant watched 2025. Brandon's idea naturally. Brandon Chelsea's already placing bets on Zara's shoes. $200, says they're off-brand knockoffs. Tyler photographers are ready. This is going to be legendary. Chelsea. Can't wait for her to crumble when she sees the guest list. Ethan stared at the messages, a low hum of anger building in his chest. What had started as an offhand joke had snowballed into a spectacle. He tossed the phone onto the counter and ran a hand through his hair, pacing the open living space. His penthouse, filled with curated art and sleek modern furniture, suddenly felt like a museum, expensive, lifeless, cold. The call. The vibration of another incoming call broke the silence. This time, Alex Chen was his oldest friend and business partner. Ethan picked up. "Finally caught you," Alex said without preamble. "Tell me you didn't actually invite your assistant to the gala." Ethan sighed. "I did." "Why?" "Please explain why I opened a betting pool screenshot from Brandon 5 minutes ago." "Alex, it's complicated." "No, it's not," Alex countered sharply. "You're serious or letting them turn a person's dignity into a party game?" "Which is it?" Ethan paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't think it would spiral like this. I thought she'd decline and avoid the whole thing." "That's worse," Alex said flatly. "You invited her expecting her to be embarrassed. And now, there's an entire betting pool about her failing Jesus, Ethan." Silence stretched on the line. "I've met her," Alex continued more quietly. "Zara's sharp, professional, the kind of person who holds your life together while you're too busy signing deals to eat lunch. She deserves better than this crap. You should fix it before you make yourself into the villain." The word landed heavily. Villain. Ethan opened his mouth, but no reply came. Alex sighed, his frustration audible. "Think about what you want your reputation to be," he said finally. "And for once, stop listening to Brandon." The call ended, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. The file. An uneasy restlessness pushed him toward his office. He sat at his desk, pulling Zara's HR file open, something he'd never done outside standard reviews. Her resume was meticulous. Graduated summa cum laude while working part-time jobs to pay for tuition. Multiple internships. Professional references praise her work ethic, problem-solving, and leadership potential. He flipped through performance reports. Not once in 2 years had Zara missed a deadline, failed a project, or given less than her full effort. She'd handled irate clients, impossible schedules, and his demanding expectations with grace he hadn't appreciated until now. Somewhere along the way, she had become the invisible scaffolding holding his empire upright, and he'd treated her like furniture. The conversation. The next morning, Ethan stopped in the lobby of his building on his way to work. Marcus, the doorman and building manager, nodded in greeting. "Morning, Mr. Mitchell," Marcus said warmly. Ethan hesitated. Usually their interactions were quick and polite, but today he paused. "Marcus," he asked quietly, "if someone invited you somewhere you might not belong, but you knew they did it to embarrass you, would you still go?" Marcus studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "If I knew they wanted me to fail," he said thoughtfully, "I'd go anyway. And I'd hold my head high the whole damn time, even knowing they'd laugh." "Especially then," Marcus said. "Sometimes the best way to handle people who underestimate you is to prove them wrong." The words lingered long after Ethan stepped into the waiting car. The doubt. At the office. Ethan caught glimpses of Zara throughout the day, focused, composed, moving from task to task with quiet efficiency. She didn't bring up the gala, didn't mention overhearing anything, didn't even look at him differently. But something had shifted between them, even if she hadn't said a word. And Ethan hated the gnawing suspicion that she knew everything. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to something. But pride kept him silent. The unfamiliar feeling, that night, standing before the panoramic windows of his penthouse, Ethan poured another drink, but left it untouched. He didn't want to be around his friends for the first time in years. Their voices, Chelsea's smug laugh, Brandon's careless arrogance, Tyler's empty sarcasm, grated on him in ways they never had before. He thought of Zara likely at home, preparing for a night meant to humiliate her, and guilt burned sharp and hot in his chest. Ethan Mitchell didn't feel guilty. He was the man who closed billion-dollar deals without losing sleep. He made hard decisions and didn't look back. But this wasn't business. This was personal. The turning point. When his phone buzzed again that night, it wasn't Brandon this time. It was a news alert about the Henderson Foundation Gala, projected record-breaking donations, and a feature on their newest education initiative for underserved communities. Zara had likely already researched it all. She always did her homework. And suddenly, Ethan saw the night differently. What if she didn't just show up? What if she stole the entire show? The idea unsettled him, but not because he feared it, because for the first time, he wanted it to happen. He set his glass down, unopened, and whispered to the quiet penthouse, "Don't let them break you, Zara." That night, Ethan Mitchell didn't sleep. Not because of the gala, the media, or his so-called friends, but because somewhere deep down, he knew he'd set something in motion, and he wasn't ready for what was coming. The Plaza Hotel glimmered under the soft glow of Manhattan's city lights, its iconic facade washed in gold and marble. A line of black limousines and luxury sedans curved along the entrance, photographers flashing, as the city's elite stepped out in gowns and tuxedos worth more than most people's annual salaries. The Henderson Foundation Gala was in full swing, and inside the ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers, cascading light over towering floral arrangements, champagne flowing endlessly, and conversations buzzing like electricity in the air. Outside, one sleek black town car pulled to a deliberate stop at 7:30 p.m. Sharp, 15 minutes fashionably late. Zara sat perfectly still inside, hands resting lightly on her emerald silk gown. Her reflection stared back at her from the small mirror she held, and for a moment, she studied herself carefully. The flawless makeup, the elegant updo, the quiet strength in her own eyes. Lila's words whispered in her mind, "You don't have to become one of them, Z. Just show them who you've always been." The driver opened her door. Zara inhaled deeply and stepped out. The entrance. The air was cool against her skin, but warmth from the flashing lights hit her instantly. Photographers glanced up, expecting another forgettable arrival, and then paused. One, then another, began snapping photos rapidly. Whispers rippled down the red carpet as Zara walked gracefully toward the entrance, each measured step, deliberate, controlled, powerful. The emerald gown caught the glow of the city lights, the fabric shifting like water with every movement. She didn't rush. She didn't flinch. She belonged. The ballroom reaction. Inside the Henderson ballroom was already alive with music from a string quartet and soft laughter over champagne. Conversations floated like smoke through the grand space until Zara stepped through the ornate double doors. The nearest tables went silent. Heads turned. For a split second, the entire energy shifted. Zara felt the weight of their gazes, but didn't falter. Shoulders back, chin up, small, confident steps, exactly as she and Lila had practiced. Across the room near the bar, Ethan and his friends stood together. Chelsea froze mid-sentence, her glass halfway to her lips. Brandon's smirk slipped, confusion flashing across his face. Tyler leaned forward slightly, blinking, as if he couldn't quite believe what he saw. Ethan, however, stared. He had expected his efficient assistant, the quiet woman in tailored office skirts and minimal makeup. Instead, the woman walking toward them looked like she'd stepped straight out of a Vogue cover shoot. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was the way she carried herself, composed, unshaken, untouchable. The collision. Zara's heels clicked softly against the polished marble as she crossed the ballroom. Conversations resumed in her wake, low murmurs following her like a current. "Who is she?" whispered one woman, clutching her champagne flute tightly. "She's stunning," another replied. "That dress," someone muttered enviously, "has to be custom." Zara didn't glance at them. Her gaze was fixed on Ethan and his group. Her stride measured unhurried, confident. As she drew closer, Chelsea's lips curved into a brittle smile. She leaned toward Ethan, whispering something he didn't acknowledge. Brandon shoved his hands into his pockets, trying and failing to look unimpressed. Tyler stared openly, as though watching a slow-motion disaster he couldn't look away from. Finally, Zara reached them. "Good evening," she said smoothly, her voice calm and polite, but cool enough to frost glass. "Mr. Mitchell." Ethan cleared his throat, recovering faster than the others. "Zara," he said quietly, his voice strangely rougher than usual. "You look incredible." "Thank you," she replied with a small, restrained smile. "You did say it was a formal event." "Chelsea, strikes." Chelsea stepped forward, her designer gown sparkling under the chandeliers, her practiced social smile firmly in place. "Zara," she said sweetly, her tone dripping with honey and malice. "What a surprise. I don't think we've met adequately." "Chelsea, Whitmore." Zara extended her hand gracefully, her expression neutral. "Of course. Pleasure to meet you." Chelsea's eyes flicked down Zara's dress before she spoke again, voice pitched just slightly louder than necessary. "Love your gown. It's bold." Zara tilted her head slightly, meeting Chelsea's gaze with polite detachment. "Thank you. I've always believed confidence is the best accessory." "Don't you?" The subtle hit landed perfectly. Several nearby guests chuckled softly behind their champagne glasses. Chelsea's smile faltered, though only for a moment, commanding the room. Ethan cleared his throat, steering the conversation elsewhere. "I want to introduce you to some of the foundation board members." "Of course," Zara said smoothly, her tone controlled, despite the adrenaline humming beneath her skin. Within minutes, Ethan guided her through the crowd, introducing her to senators, business leaders, and philanthropists. Zara listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and efficiently engaged in discussions about education reform and community initiatives. Her preparation showed. When Senator Hamilton praised the gala's impact, Zara contributed insights about underserved districts and scholarship success rates, information she'd memorized over the past 3 nights. The senator blinked, impressed. "Ms. Johnson, I'd be honored to continue this discussion at our policy advisory session next month. I'll have my office reach out." Zara smiled graciously. "Thank you, Senator. I'd be delighted." Ethan watched quietly, pride flickering behind his usually guarded expression. He'd expected her to survive the night. Instead, she was commanding it. Underestimated no more. Meanwhile, Chelsea and Brandon watched from across the room, unease settling in. "She's actually pulling this off," Brandon muttered under his breath. Chelsea's grip tightened on her champagne glass. For now, she whispered, "Let's see how long she lasts when the real tests begin." The dance. Later in the evening, the music shifted into a slow waltz, and Ethan extended his hand toward Zara. "Would you?" He asked, his tone quieter than before. For a heartbeat, she considered refusing. But this was a performance, and she had a role to play. "Of course," she replied, placing her hand lightly in his. As they stepped onto the dance floor, whispers swirled around them. Ethan's hand rested gently against her waist, his other holding hers, leading her through the steps with unexpected ease. "You've been practicing," he murmured, glancing down at her. "You'd be surprised what I've been practicing," she replied evenly, her gaze unwavering. He smiled faintly, but his grip tightened slightly. Zara. She looked up at him, her expression cool but calm. Save it, Ethan. Tonight's not about us. For the first time, he didn't argue. The moment before the storm. By the time the song ended, Zara had left her mark. Guests were whispering her name. Influential donors sought her out, and Ethan's friends. They weren't laughing anymore. But as Zara stepped off the dance floor, she caught Chelsea watching her across the room, calculating, quiet and furious. Whatever came next, Zara knew this wasn't over. Tonight had only just begun. The music swelled softly beneath the crystal chandeliers. But Zara felt the undercurrents shifting beneath the elegant surface of the gala. She'd walked into this ballroom, expecting whispers and judgment, but hadn't expected to find herself in the center of the evening's attention. Senators had taken her card. Business leaders wanted to hear her thoughts. Conversations slowed when she entered a circle, and even strangers asked her opinion on education policy. She had prepared for this moment, but hadn't expected to enjoy it. Across the room, however, Chelsea Whitmore watched her like a hawk, glass of champagne untouched in her hand, irritation concealed behind a polished social smile. Chelsea makes her move. It began casually as Chelsea approached Zara, with the smooth grace of someone who'd spent her entire life mastering subtle confrontation. Zara, Chelsea said warmly, her tone just right for those nearby to overhear. I have to ask, who designed your dress? It's stunning. Zara smiled politely, noting the trap. Chelsea wanted her to name a discount boutique, giving everyone a reason to dismiss her elegance as borrowed. I'm glad you like it, Zara replied lightly, letting her voice carry just enough to reach the listeners around them. But you know what I've learned? The most important thing isn't the designer's name on the tag. It's how you carry yourself when you wear it. A ripple of soft laughter passed through the small circle around them. A few guests exchanged approving glances. Chelsea's smile froze brittle at the edges, but she recovered quickly. Well, she said smoothly, confidence certainly is everything. Exactly. Zara agreed, matching her tone perfectly. That's why it's the one accessory I never borrow. Chelsea blinked once, just once, before stepping back, her smile thinner than before. Vanessa arrives. Before Chelsea could regroup, a new voice entered the conversation, soft and melodic, but edged with steel. Ethan, someone called across the floor. Zara turned to see Vanessa Sterling stepping into the circle, as though she owned the ground beneath her heels. Vanessa was radiant in a silver gown that shimmered like liquid light. Her blonde waves perfectly styled her every move calculated. The daughter of a prominent media family and Ethan's former girlfriend, she had built an entire persona out of perfection, and tonight perfection arrived, prepared for war. Vanessa said smoothly, her cool blue eyes sweeping over Zara with polite curiosity. You must be Ethan's date. I'm Vanessa. Zara extended her hand with quiet composure. Zara Johnson. It's nice to meet you. Vanessa's handshake lingered just a second too long. I have to say, she continued, voice soft, but loud enough for those nearby, I wasn't expecting Ethan to bring someone from work. Zara smiled faintly, refusing to flinch. Sometimes the best partnerships start in unexpected places. The reply was simple, polite, and devastatingly effective. The small cluster of guests surrounding them chuckled, impressed by Zara's composure. Vanessa's lips curved, but her eyes cooled several degrees. The intellectual duel. Moments later, a prominent venture capitalist named David Morrison joined the group, champagne in hand. Zara, he asked, intrigued. Ethan tells me you're in corporate administration. Yes, Zara replied smoothly. However, I focus heavily on business development and strategic planning. It is rewarding to help build sustainable models that create value for stakeholders and communities alike. David raised an eyebrow, surprised. Sustainable models. That's... More sophisticated than I expected. What's your take on the Henderson Foundation's scholarship allocation model? It was a subtle test, the kind seasoned elites use to measure who belonged. Zara didn't hesitate. The results speak for themselves, she said confidently. Funding early education in underserved districts has led to measurable improvements in academic performance. But the challenge isn't just access, it's infrastructure. Scholarships don't fix systemic inequity unless we invest in the schools themselves. There was a pause, then David smiled, nodding thoughtfully. You're absolutely right. Chelsea and Vanessa exchanged glances, the first cracks in their composure showing. Ethan watches. From just behind her, Ethan watched Zara with quiet astonishment. He'd seen her handle impossible clients, juggle dozens of deadlines, and manage crises without sweat. But this was different. She wasn't surviving the room. She was commanding it. When David walked away singing her praises, Ethan leaned in slightly. You've done your homework, he murmured. Zara glanced at him briefly, her expression composed. I prepare for everything, Mr. Mitchell. He hesitated, wanting to say something more, but her tone made it clear that she wasn't his assistant tonight. Tonight, she was his equal. The senator's invitation. Later, Senator Hamilton approached, extending a hand. Ms. Johnson, thank you for your insights earlier. Your perspective on implementation challenges was refreshing and overdue. Thank you, Senator Zara said warmly. I want to invite you to join our advisory committee on education reform. He continued loud enough for nearby guests to hear. We need voices like yours in these discussions. A ripple of surprise moved through the surrounding circle. Advisory roles like this were rare, coveted positions reserved for thought leaders, not assistants. Zara inclined her head graciously. I'd be honored to contribute. As the senator walked away, Ethan caught Chelsea's expression out of the corner of his eye, a delicate mix of disbelief and growing resentment. Vanessa's final jab. Vanessa wasn't finished. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to seem private while ensuring those nearby still overheard. She said lightly, her gaze fixed on Zara's earrings. This world rules a certain elegance, certain connections. Some things can't be bought or studied. Zara turned to face her fully, her voice soft but steady. True, she agreed. Real elegance isn't about price tags or privilege. It's about how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them. There was a beat of silence. Even Chelsea looked away this time, shifting power. When Zara returned to Ethan's side, whispers followed her like shadows. Guests watched her pass, not with judgment, but curiosity and respect. Ethan's friends didn't look amused for the first time that evening. Brandon frowned slightly. Tyler avoided eye contact. Chelsea's glass trembled in her hand before she set it down carefully. And Vanessa. She lingered near the edge of the ballroom, calculating her next move, but clearly unsettled. Zara hadn't just survived the social traps designed to humiliate her. She'd outmaneuvered them entirely, foreshadowing the storm. Ethan leaned closer as the orchestra shifted into a livelier melody, speaking low enough for only her to hear. You know, he said quietly, you've just made a lot of enemies tonight. Zara smiled faintly, lifting her glass. Then I'd better make it worth their while. Somewhere across the ballroom, Chelsea and Vanessa exchanged a look. The game had only just begun. The gala had reached its peak. Champagne flowed freely. The orchestra swelled with a lively medley, and clusters of Manhattan's elite mingled under the glittering chandeliers. Zara had moved from conversation to conversation, seamlessly earning nods of respect from influential figures. But across the ballroom, Chelsea watched her every step, her polished smile concealing a simmering fury. Vanessa stood nearby sipping champagne, with calculated patience. Brandon and Tyler exchanged uneasy glances, sensing something brewing beneath the polished surface of the night. Then Chelsea struck. The first blow. She waited until Zara returned to Ethan's side, before gliding forward glass in hand with a false expression of innocence. Zara Chelsea began sweetly, her voice carrying just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I was telling Vanessa about the little wager we made earlier. Zara stilled her gaze, locking onto Chelsea's. Ethan's jaw tightened instantly. "Chelsea," he said sharply, his voice low warning. But Chelsea ignored him, tilting her head with practiced grace. "Oh, don't look so shocked," she said lightly, addressing Zara directly. "It was harmless fun, really. We were guessing whether you'd actually show up tonight, or if you'd decline and save yourself the embarrassment." Conversations around them quieted. A few guests leaned closer, curious. Zara kept her expression neutral, though her pulse thudded in her ears. "I see," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tightness in her chest. "The truth spreads." Brandon, emboldened by Chelsea's lead, added with a careless shrug. "To be fair, I thought you'd make up an excuse. I even bet 1,000 on it." Laughter rippled faintly through the small crowd. Ethan's voice was a sharp blade cutting through it. "Enough." But Chelsea pressed on her eyes, gleaming with quiet malice. "Oh, come now, Ethan. Please don't act like you weren't in on it." Shouldn't Zara know how this whole thing started? Vanessa, standing just behind Chelsea, arched an eyebrow, intrigued. Guests nearby turned openly now, their expressions shifting from polite interest to anticipation. Zara's breath caught, though she didn't let it show. Her spine straightened, her chin lifted, and she looked at Ethan calmly, waiting. The silence before the storm. Ethan's mouth opened, but no words came. The truth hung between them, unspoken, but undeniable. The laughter, the bets. The invitation was meant as a joke. Zara swallowed once her face composed, her voice low but steady. "No need to explain," she said finally, the softness of her tone cutting sharper than anger. "It's clear now." She turned slightly, intending to walk away, but Chelsea wasn't finished. The humiliation attempt. "Oh, don't go," Chelsea said sweetly, twisting the knife with deliberate precision. "We were just about to start another pool. Zara, you've exceeded expectations, but some wonder how long it will last. There's a difference between playing dress-up and truly belonging right." A few sharp laughs echoed in the tense air, and that was it. Ethan stepped forward, his expression darkening, his voice cutting like steel through the crowd's murmur. "Enough," he said again, louder this time. Guests turned fully now, watching, sensing something about to unfold. But instead of backing down, Chelsea smirked, swirling her champagne lazily. "Relax, Ethan. We're just having a little fun." Ethan's breaking point. Ethan's following words weren't loud, but carried across the ballroom with startling clarity. "You think this is fun?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. "You think mocking someone's dignity, someone's worth, is entertainment?" Chelsea blinked, caught off guard by the edge in his tone. He turned, addressing Chelsea, and everyone gathered around, his voice rising with conviction. "Yes," Ethan said, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "This started as a joke. I invited Zara tonight because some of you thought it would be amusing to watch her fail." Gasps rippled outward, a hush falling over the nearby tables. Phones quietly lifted. People were already recording. "But here's what happened," he continued, his voice steady and firm. "Zara didn't just show up. She owned this room. While the rest of you played your little games, she's been commanding conversations with senators, winning advisory invitations, and earning respect correctly through intelligence, grace, and actual accomplishment." Zara stood frozen, breath caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. The speech. Ethan wasn't finished. Zara Johnson is one of the most brilliant, capable people I've ever worked with, he said, his tone fierce, unapologetic. She's handled impossible deadlines, demanding clients and my life for 2 years without complaint. She's pursuing her MBA while working full-time and supporting her mother through cancer treatments. Something none of you even knew, because she carries herself with dignity. Chelsea's glass trembled slightly in her hand now. Brandon shifted uncomfortably. Tyler looked down at his shoes. Vanessa's expression cooled into something unreadable. And if anyone here thinks she doesn't belong in this room, Ethan finished, his voice ringing clearly under the chandeliers, I suggest you take a long look at yourselves before questioning her. Silence followed, heavy, absolute, electric. The fallout. Around them, murmurs began, sharp and fast. A few guests nodded subtly in Zara's direction. Others whispered among themselves, but no one dared laugh anymore. Chelsea's perfect composure cracked slightly before she forced a tight smile and stepped back into the crowd without another word. Brandon muttered something under his breath and followed. Tyler disappeared toward the bar. Vanessa lingered a moment longer, studying Zara carefully, then offered a soft, deliberate smile that didn't reach her eyes before gliding away. For the first time all evening, Zara stood in the center of the ballroom, with every eye on her, not as entertainment, but as someone who had just been defended in front of Manhattan's elite by one of its most powerful men. The aftermath. Ethan turned toward her slowly, his voice softer now. Zara. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. Thank you, she said finally. Her tone polite, measured, but distant. It was gratitude without forgiveness. Before he could respond, Zara excused herself, walking calmly toward the terrace, heels clicking softly against the marble, her composure intact despite the storm still raging inside her. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before following, because tonight wasn't finished yet. The terrace was quiet, far removed from the glittering chaos of the ballroom. Beyond the glass doors, the city sprawled beneath the night skylights, shimmering like scattered stars. Zara leaned against the railing, her hand resting lightly on the cool stone edge as she drew slow, steady breaths. The distant hum of traffic mingled with the faint strains of the orchestra drifting from inside, but none of it settled the storm twisting in her chest. The confrontation replayed in her mind, each word cutting anew. The laughter, the bets, Ethan's silence. Then his speech was powerful, raw, and unexpected. But speeches were easy. Trust was not. Behind her, the door creaked open softly. The conversation. Zara. Ethan said quietly, stepping onto the terrace. His usual composure was gone. His shoulders were tense, his jaw set. She didn't turn to face him. You should go back inside, Mr. Mitchell. People are probably waiting for you. He hesitated at the formality, his voice low when he finally replied. I don't care about them right now. I care about you. Zara let out a soft, incredulous laugh, shaking her head slightly. Do you? I do, he said firmly. I was wrong about everything. Finally, she turned, meeting his gaze head on. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with restrained emotion. She said evenly that you invited me tonight because you thought I didn't belong, because it was amusing. Ethan flinched at the quiet precision of her words. At first, yes. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise, but I didn't know them. Chelsea, Brandon, all of them. I didn't think they'd take it this far. I should have stopped it sooner. You didn't stop it, she said softly, her voice steady but sharp. You only defended me when you had no choice. He swallowed, hard guilt flashing across his face. I know, he admitted quietly. And I hate that I let you down. For a moment silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. The wall between them. Zara turned back toward the city, her grip tightening on the railing. "I've worked so hard to get here," she said, her voice low, almost to herself. "Every step, every sacrifice for people like them to laugh behind my back, to treat me like some novelty they could bet on." "They were wrong," Ethan said softly, stepping closer. "They were wrong about you. I was wrong about you." She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "That's the thing, Ethan. I don't need your validation. I never did." The words landed with quiet finality. Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I'm trying, Zara. I want to fix this. Tell me how." "You can't," she said. "This isn't something you fix with apologies or speeches." Her voice didn't waver, but inside something knotted tightly in her chest, a mix of anger, pride, and something she refused to name: the escape. Before Ethan could respond, Zara straightened, smoothing the emerald silk of her gown. She said calmly that "I've made enough of an appearance for one night. Please let the driver know I'll find my own way home." He stepped forward quickly. "Zara, wait." She shook her head. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Mr. Mitchell." Without another glance, she walked past him, her heels clicking softly against the terrace floor before disappearing through the side corridor leading out of the ballroom. Ethan stood there motionless, the cool night air pressing against him. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar, powerless. The hospital visit. An hour later, Zara sat in her mother's hospital room, the soft beeping of monitors steady in the background. Carmen stirred as Zara adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Baby Carmen murmured, her voice groggy. "You're dressed up. Did you go somewhere fancy tonight?" Zara hesitated, then smiled faintly. "The Henderson Gala." Her mother blinked slowly. "Oh, that's a big deal." "It is," Zara said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Carmen studied her daughter's face. Her expression was gentle but perceptive. But something happened. Zara sighed, looking down at her hands. "They didn't think I belonged there, Mom. They made bets on whether I'd show up, whether I'd humiliate myself. And Ethan, he knew at least at the beginning." Her mother was quiet momentarily, then reached for her hand, holding it firmly despite her weakened strength. "Listen to me," Carmen said, her voice soft but steady. "There are people in this world who will always underestimate you. Let them. That's their weakness, not yours." Zara swallowed hard, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "I thought I was prepared for tonight. I could walk in there and prove myself." "And you did," Carmen said firmly. "You walked into their world and didn't just belong, you stood out. Don't let their ignorance turn into your burden." Zara exhaled shakily, leaning into her mother's hand. I don't know what to do about Ethan." Carmen smiled faintly. "Do what feels right for you, but don't make decisions out of anger, baby. Make them out of strength." The morning after, Zara walked into Mitchell Technologies the next day with her usual composure, but the atmosphere felt different. Conversations hushed when she passed. Colleagues glanced up from their desks, whispers trailing behind her like shadows. Several attendees had live-streamed the gala. Clips of Ethan's speech had already circulated online, and everyone in the company had seen it. When she reached her desk, there was a small envelope waiting. No note, no explanation, just a keycard to the executive conference lounge she had never been invited to. Zara stared at it for a long moment, then set it aside without opening it. Ethan's shift. Ethan sat behind his glass desk in his office, staring out over the city without seeing it. His usual circle of friends felt distant and irrelevant for the first time in years. Calls from Brandon and Chelsea went unanswered, Messages piled up, ignored. Instead, his focus drifted to Zara, to the woman who had quietly managed his life for 2 years, carried burdens he hadn't noticed, and stood taller than anyone else in that ballroom. He realized belatedly that last night hadn't humbled her. It had revealed her. And now he had a choice, not about Zara, but about himself. 2 diverging paths. By evening, Zara sat at her kitchen table, reviewing work reports, her untouched tea cooling beside her. Her phone buzzed with an unread message from Ethan. "I owe you more than an apology. Can we talk?" She stared at the screen for several seconds before locking it without replying. Because some wounds didn't heal overnight. And some choices, hers and his, would define everything that came next. The next morning, the city felt heavier than usual. Its skyline wrapped in fog that blurred the sharp edges of Manhattan's towers. Inside Mitchell, technologies, an unusual hush settled over the executive floor. Ethan stood by his office window suit jacket, draped carelessly over a chair phone, buzzing insistently on the desk behind him. He didn't turn to answer it. The fallout from the gala had begun. Fractures among friends. Brandon's name lit up his phone again. Ethan finally picked up, his tone clipped. "What do you want?" "You've got to be kidding me," Brandon snapped. "You embarrassed us in front of half the city last night. Defending her like that. Do you know how this looks?" Ethan stared out over the skyline, unmoving. "I did the right thing," Brandon scoffed. "She's an assistant, Ethan. She doesn't belong in that world. And you made us look like fools." "No." Ethan cut him off sharply. "You did that yourselves." A stunned pause followed. Then Brandon's voice hardened. "You're changing, man. And not for the better." "The opposite," Ethan replied coldly before hanging up. A flood of unread messages followed Chelsea's furious texts. Vanessa's carefully worded remarks. Tyler's half-hearted attempts to play mediator. But Ethan silenced the phone completely, tossing it onto his desk. For the first time in years, he felt lighter without their voices in his ear. Zara's dilemma. Downstairs, Zara sat in a quiet conference room, a thin folder open in front of her. Inside was a formal invitation from Senator Hamilton's advisory committee, offering her a seat among nationally recognized education policy experts. The letter was crisp. The offer is genuine. But taking it would mean stepping further into a spotlight she wasn't sure she wanted. It wasn't just about the committee. Since the gala, her inbox had been flooded with messages, invitations from nonprofits, speaking requests, even a podcast appearance. A single night had shifted her reputation entirely, and she wasn't sure whether to embrace it or retreat. Her phone buzzed. "Lila, you're trending on Twitter. @Emerald Queen. Call me now." Zara groaned softly, closing her eyes. Attention was the last thing she wanted. The hallway encounter. Later that afternoon, Zara stepped out of the conference room, reports tucked under her arm. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with Ethan. "Zara," he said softly, stepping aside. "Mr. Mitchell," she replied, her tone polite but calm. He said, "I've been trying to reach you," searching her expression. "Can we talk?" "I've been busy," she said evenly, shifting the folder in her hands. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening slightly. "Please, just 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, she followed him into his office, standing near the door rather than sitting. The conversation they couldn't avoid. "I know you don't trust me," Ethan began, his voice low and steady. "And I don't blame you. But what happened at the gala? It opened my eyes. To Chelsea, to Brandon, to myself." Zara studied him carefully, silent. "I've cut them off," he continued. "All of them. Brandon, Chelsea, even Vanessa." Her brow arched slightly. "That's convenient." It's necessary, he corrected firmly. Because I realized something last night. I've been surrounded by people who thrive on tearing others down to feel important. And I let it happen. Zara exhaled slowly, setting her folder on the edge of his desk. And now you want what forgiveness? Ethan's gaze held hers. No. I want to earn back your respect. For a moment, neither spoke. The quiet hum of the city filled the room like static, an unspoken shift. Finally, Zara broke the silence. Respect isn't given back because you ask for it, Ethan. It's earned through actions, not speeches. I know, he said softly, and I'll prove it. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her expression unreadable. You might not get the chance. What does that mean? He asked carefully. Zara hesitated, then nodded toward the folder she'd left on his desk. It means I've been offered an advisory seat. It's an opportunity that could change everything. Ethan blinked, surprised. Zara. That's incredible. It is, she agreed quietly. But if I take it, I'll need to step back from my role here. I can't do both. The weight of her words settled between them like a stone. Ethan's fear. You're leaving, Ethan said finally, his voice low. I haven't decided, she replied carefully. But I won't stay somewhere where I'm underestimated or humiliated again. Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping. I would never let that happen again. Zara's gaze met his, steady and unflinching. It already happened once. His jaw tightened, guilt flashing across his features, but she didn't soften. Not this time. The invitation. Before Zara could leave, Ethan spoke again, quieter now. There's a board reception next week for a major education initiative. The senator and half the advisory committee will be there. You should go. She hesitated. Why? Because you've earned your place in those rooms, he said. And whether you stay here or move on, I want you to walk in knowing you belong. Zara studied him for a long moment, searching his expression, but said nothing. Then she picked up the folder and left the office without another word. Lines in the sand. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, untouched whiskey on the table, staring at the city through floor-to-ceiling glass. For years, his life had been defined by power, influence, and the illusion of control. But now, for the first time, something he valued might slip through his fingers, and there was nothing he could buy, promise, or negotiate to change it. Across town, Zara sat by her apartment window, city lights flickering outside. Lila was on speakerphone, chattering excitedly about Zara's rising profile, but her mind was elsewhere. No matter what she chose to stay, to leave, to rise higher, she knew one thing for sure. The balance of power had shifted. This time, she wasn't the one being underestimated. The boardroom at the Midtown Hilton hummed softly with low conversation, expensive perfumes mingling with the faint scent of polished mahogany. The education reform reception was the kind of event where alliances were forged quietly over champagne, where reputations were built or broken in a single night. Zara stood near the far wall, fingers curled loosely around a glass of sparkling water, her emerald dress replaced with a sleek navy sheath that moved like silk when she breathed. The night felt different from the gala. She wasn't there as someone's assistant this time. She was there as herself. The decision. Senator Hamilton approached, his expression warm and deliberate. Ms. Johnson? He greeted, shaking her hand firmly. We're thrilled you're considering the advisory seat. We need fresh perspectives like yours on policy. Zara smiled politely. I appreciate the opportunity, Senator. I haven't made a final decision yet. Well, he said with a knowing smile, tonight might make that decision for you. Half the committee is here. Talk to them. See where you fit. She nodded, thanking him before he moved on to greet another donor. See where you fit. The words lingered uncomfortably in her mind. Not because she doubted her capability, but because for the first time, she realized She didn't need anyone else to tell her where she belonged. The shift. Across the room, Ethan watched her from a distance. Unlike the gala, no friends were at his side, no. Chelsea whispering barbed comments. No Brandon fueling chaos. He stood alone, quiet, giving her space. It was a calculated choice, one he hoped Zara noticed. When he finally approached, his voice was soft. "You look like you own the room." Zara glanced at him, expression measured. "I may do that." A faint smile touched his lips. "You should." Silence stretched between them, momentarily filled only by the low hum of conversations around them. "I wanted to say," he began carefully, "that no matter what you decide about the advisory seat, I'll support you even if it means stepping back." Her brow arched slightly. "That sounds like growth." "It's a work in progress," he admitted, a hint of wryness in his tone. The confrontation revisited. Later in the evening, Chelsea appeared at the periphery of the reception, her silver gown sparkling under the lights. But this time, she wasn't smiling. Zara braced instinctively as Chelsea approached, prepared for another cutting remark. Instead, Chelsea hesitated, then exhaled softly. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. Zara blinked, caught off guard. "Do you?" Chelsea's gaze faltered. "For the bets, for the comments, for all of it. You didn't deserve that." Zara studied her carefully, searching for insincerity, but found only unease. "Thank you," Zara said finally, her voice calm but distant. "I accept your apology, but I don't forget easily." Chelsea nodded once and retreated into the crowd. The matter was closed without fanfare. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. Zara was no longer the target. The moment of clarity. By the night's end, Zara stood alone on the balcony overlooking the glittering city. The skyline stretched endlessly, alive with possibility. Lila's voice echoed in her mind. "You don't have to become one of them. Just show them who you've always been." She thought about the advisory seat, about Mitchell Technologies, about Ethan. For so long, her life had been about proving herself, proving she belonged in rooms like this, and was worth more than anyone assumed. But standing there, she realized something startling. She didn't need to prove anything anymore. The choice. When Ethan found her on the balcony, she turned to him before he could speak. "I've decided," she said quietly. His expression softened, a flicker of nervousness crossing his features. "You're taking the seat?" "Yes," she said, "and I'm resigning from Mitchell Technologies." Ethan's breath caught, though he recovered quickly. "Zara." "It's not because of what happened," she said gently. "Not entirely. I've grown too much to stay where I started. I need to do this for me." He searched her gaze, seeing the quiet resolve there, and nodded slowly. "Then I'll respect your decision." "You'd better," she replied, a faint smile curving her lips. Ethan's redemption. Before she could step away, he spoke again, low and sincere. "For what it's worth, you've changed how I see everything. Myself, the people I keep close, the kind of man I want to be." Zara tilted her head slightly, her expression softening but guarded. "Then prove it, Ethan. Don't just be better when I'm in the room. Be better when I'm not." He nodded once, and this time she believed him. One last look. As she left the reception later that night, Zara paused at the top of the marble staircase, glancing back at the glittering room behind her. She wasn't the woman who'd walked into that gala weeks ago, desperate to be seen. Now people noticed her because she owned her story. And as she stepped into the cool Manhattan night, her future stretched wide open, limitless and unclaimed. Epilogue. 6 months later. A headline flashed across the New York Times digital edition: Rising Voice in Education Reform. Zara Johnson leads advisory breakthrough. Zara closed her laptop, sipping her coffee slowly, as the morning sun streamed through her apartment window. Her phone buzzed. A simple message from Ethan, proud of you. She smiled faintly, but didn't reply. Not yet. Some chapters had to end before new ones could truly begin.